Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you're too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power.
Otep, this is Femi here with Freedom Now, and your ears are in tuned at high frequencies in a liberated zone. Freedom Now is a Pan-Africanist, global news outlet from coast to coast, dispelling the Western propaganda media and their all lies point of views. Freedom Now is devoted to relay true news, views, and proper clues to form solutions around freedom for the oppressed worldwide. Now, get relaxed, grab a pen, and phone a friend, because Freedom Now is set to begin to awaken deep sleepers dreaming about freedom now, within, in, freedom now, in.
Habari Gani. This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now's agenda for this Saturday, February 15th, 2025. The central theme for today's program is Haitian Revolutionaries. This hour, prolific author, radical historian, professor of African American Studies at the University of Houston, and Freedom Now co-producer, Dr. Gerald Horne interviews Dr. Julia Gaffield, professor of history at William and Mary College and author of the book I Have Avenged America, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Haiti's Fight for Freedom. And later in the hour, Dr. Horne interviews Dr. Marlene Daut, professor of French and African Diaspora Studies at Yale University and author of the book Awakening the Ashes, An Intellectual History of the Haitian Revolution. Our music clip mix includes MLK, Zap Mama, McCoy Tyner, Rufus Reed, Donald Byrd, Joe Henderson, Oscar Pettiford, and more. We want to remind our listeners that we are in a fund drive and we need to raise money to keep our lights on in the building as we are volunteer programmers here on Freedom Now. And if you want to donate during this program, you can go online at www.kpfk.org and pledge your support. You can get a thank you gift, or you can just give your tax-deductible donation, also by calling 818-985-KPFK. That's 818-985-5735. Thank you so much for supporting us this hour. Please continue to call in or log in online if you're not listening live online. And we do want to add one brief announcement that the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival is happening here in Los Angeles. It goes until Monday, February 17th. There are events happening today and tomorrow, aside from films, which is the PATH Institute. So if there are any filmmakers in our listening audience, please head over to the Culver Theater. You can go to www.paff.org for more details. That's www.path.org for more details about the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival continuing through this weekend through Monday, February 17th. We hope to see you there. And here we go with our program. So sit back, phone a friend, and as always, we stand ready for revolution.
For Pacifica Radio, KPFK, this is Gerald Horne, and with me on the line is Julia Gaffield, Associate Professor of History at the College of William and Mary in Virginia, and author of a forthcoming biography of the Haitian revolutionary hero Dessalines. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK Los Angeles, Professor Gaffield.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So who was Dessalines and why are you writing about him?
Well, I'll start with why I'm writing about him. This is for my forthcoming book. I Have Avenged America, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Haiti's Fight for Freedom. It's coming out this summer. And I wrote the book because I really think that the world needs to learn Dessalines' life story. In typical narratives about the Haitian Revolution, the international community, especially in recent decades, has really promoted Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines' predecessor, as like the hero of the Haitian Revolution. And emblematic of this is the fact that in the past 20 or so years, there's been kind of 5 new biographies of Louverture. And I'm talking about kind of books published outside of Haiti, while there haven't been any of Dessalines. And I'm certainly not saying that there shouldn't be biographies of Toussaint Louverture. I just also think that we should write about Dessalines. And as I was kind of doing research on Dessalines, I really became convinced that the emphasis on Louverture over Dessalines was very strategic on the part of the international community. And it's a strategy that I learned really started during Dessalines' life. Writers in foreign nations, they condemned, they fictionalized, they definitely criticized Dessalines' life and his character as a way to undermine Haitian independence and sovereignty, right? So the kind of person and the country became one. And as part of this strategy, authors and other kind of various commentators framed Dessalines as someone who was extremely violent and barbaric. And some people continue to do this. Right. He was like characterized and is sometimes still characterized as the antithesis of so-called civilization, right? And therefore no one could or should take Haiti seriously as a country. So there's a kind of very intentional project in this. But these portrayals didn't really match what I was reading in the archives. Dessalines was someone who was fully committed to destroying slavery, racism, and colonialism. And I know you've had Marlene Daut on your show, and she calls this kind of 3-sided fight, the 1804 principle, right? Emphasizing that nobody should be enslaved or face racial discrimination or be subjected to colonialism. And this emphasizes the achievements of the 1804 Haitian Declaration of Independence. And yes, kind of those wars required violence, right? He is a military leader. He was a military leader. But Dessalines was also a measured diplomat. He was practical and strategic. We see glimpses in the archives of a very wry sense of humor. We see glimpses of kind of deep and lasting friendships. And so what I wanted to do with this book was to kind of highlight him as a person and not as a trope, and to understand the decisions that he made as he was fighting for his own and for Haiti's freedom and independence.
So part of the attempt at damaging the historical reputation of Dessalines emerges from what has been reported as the 1804 executions of a number of French nationals. What does your research in your book have to say about that?
Right. The events kind of in the months following the January 1st Haitian Declaration, January 1st, 1804 Haitian Declaration of Independence have been kind of the most publicized part of Dessalines' leadership of the country. And they're typically referred to as massacres. But as you said, I in my book refer to them as executions. Some contemporary scholars have gone so far as to call it genocide, that there was a kind of attempt to eliminate all white people from the country and that therefore this should be considered genocide. What I have found is that the actual evidence from these events tells a much more complicated story, and that rather than a kind of indiscriminate and wholesale massacre, a very kind of loaded term even at the time, that Dessalines and his generals executed people who they thought were kind of threatening the state. And very important to keep in mind when considering these events is that in the first half of 1804, but it continues for years to come, Haiti and France were still at war, right? This is a kind of active war. And most of that is because when the last French troops evacuated from the western side of the island, they did not concede defeat. And very much the opposite. They claimed that they were still the kind of colonial power on the island, that Haiti as a country kind of shouldn't be recognized. They continued to use the name Saint-Domingue. They threatened reinvasion. They attacked foreign ships. There were kind of French ships patrolling the waters. They were threatening re-enslavement. And so this is the context for these executions, right? That he kind of learns that the French have not conceded defeat and are planning a re-invasion. And so the colonists the former colonists who he views as potential collaborators, threats to the state, people who were kind of discovered to have been writing negatively about the new government, these people were executed. It's also executions for past crimes, and these crimes he outlines explicitly in a proclamation in April of 1804. The crimes were those committed by the very recent French expedition under General Leclerc, Napoleon Bonaparte's brother-in-law, and he and his successor, Donatien Rochambeau, committed extreme atrocities in Haiti or in Saint-Domingue during the War for Independence. So these executions are retribution, punishment for those crimes. But then he also kind of considers this moment of violence in the context of the century plus of slavery that he and his people had suffered under French colonialism.
Now, I take it that he excluded from execution Polish legionnaires. Talk to us about that.
There are some really interesting exclusions from these executions. Polish, and in the Constitution, his 1805 Constitution, he also names Germans and some white women, but they're kind of other people as well. These are people who were considered to be either loyal to the state, to the nation, or useful to the nation. And many of these people had defected from the French expeditionary forces during the War for Independence, seeing that they were kind of fighting for a cause that they didn't believe in, and so defected to the indigenous army, which is what Dessalines called his army. In doing research for my first book, Haitian Connections in the Atlantic World, I found evidence that the governor of Jamaica was trying to exchange, kind of do a prisoner exchange with Dessalines, and that kind of he wanted some of these Polish troops to come to Jamaica in exchange for people originally from Saint-Domingue who would kind of be sent back. But several of, I think it was the number was a couple hundred of these people were brought to Jamaica, and they refused to get off the ship and were kind of brought back to Haiti saying, actually, we'd like to live here instead. There's other people who get mentioned in the sources, kind of priests, doctors, and those types of people. And the Haitian state provides an avenue for these white people to get full citizenship as Haitians. They are kind of given full rights in the Constitution, but and through kind of naturalization documents.
Are they redefined as being Black?
This is one of the most interesting constitutions in Haiti. Haiti has had a lot of constitutions, but Dessalines published a constitution in 1805 that recognized the Haitian Empire, which was created in late 1804. But in this constitution, he eliminates racial hierarchy and just says everybody here will be known as Black. And so everybody in the country would be considered kind of a Black person, a Haitian. And the kind of what's really interesting, scholars have emphasized this, to point out that the kind of source of universal freedom was Blackness, rather than the previous system was that universal freedom was for white people. And so it kind of flips it on its head and says, no, the source of freedom is Blackness in this country. It's not an article in the Constitution that lasts very long. The next Constitution, published in 1806, eliminates that and says everybody will just be known as Haitian. But and that was not under Dessalines, but it's a really unique article in Dessalines' Constitution.
So you referred a few moments ago to Toussaint. What was his relationship with him?
I think they have a really complicated relationship, and one that I think we're just starting to discover. They first met before the Revolution, when Dessalines was enslaved on a coffee plantation in Grande Rivière du Nord, kind of south of the main port city in the north of Haiti. And he was enslaved by several different people, but on the kind of same plantation by two different men. The first one was named Philippe Jasmin, Philippe Jasmin. And Philippe Jasmin, also sometimes known by the last name Désir, was married to a woman named Marie Marthe, and she was the daughter of Toussaint Louverture, who went by at that time the name Toussaint de Breda. And there was a time, a couple years, in which Toussaint Louverture, then de Breda, rented this coffee plantation while Jean-Jacques Dessalines, or not yet known as Dessalines, was enslaved on this plantation. So they kind of began their relationship in a very hierarchical relationship. It's not exactly the case that he was enslaved by Toussaint Louverture, but he was enslaved and kind of under the authority of Toussaint Louverture. And this hierarchical relationship continues throughout the Revolution. But I don't think it's hierarchical in the sense of kind of very conflictual, right? They seem to really trust each other. They seem to kind of have the same beliefs, fight for the same cause. They're kind of deeply committed, and they work very closely together from the early years of the Revolution. In the early years of the Revolution, we do not have a lot of information about Dessalines' experiences or whereabouts, but pretty quickly he starts rising through the ranks of Toussaint Louverture's forces. He ends up kind of being considered as somebody who might be next in line to Toussaint Louverture among some other people, and there's some kind of interesting potential infighting among the higher ranks of the military. But he's one of the kind of, next in command right-hand man to Toussaint Louverture for much of the Revolution. Their relationship ends in a very different way. There's a moment in which I think Toussaint Louverture kind of breaks Dessalines' trust, and there's a real kind of end to the relationship. And this is when Toussaint Louverture brokers an agreement with General Leclerc during this last French expedition, and kind of concedes and ends up retiring from the military. And I think from then on, Louverture himself describes this conversation with Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Charles Belair as being kind of very emotional, and they were kind of crying and pleading with him not to concede to Leclerc. And I think that that's a moment that from then on, he kind of didn't believe that they were fighting the same fight. I think he knew about Toussaint Louverture's arrest, and some scholars have claimed that he assisted in Toussaint Louverture's arrest. But I've kind of come to the conclusion that rather than assisting, he just did nothing to stop it, because of this kind of critical break in their relationship.
If I'm not mistaken, a few years ago, you captured headlines when you uncovered the Haitian Declaration of Independence. How does that declaration compare with July 4th, 1776?
And yes, many years ago, I identified the then only known remaining printed copy of the Haitian Declaration of Independence. It was issued by the government printing press, and therefore considered a kind of official version, or the most official version that we have, right? Unlike the U.S. version, we don't have, or we don't know of yet, of a signed copy of the Haitian Declaration of Independence. It turns out that in the National Archives of the UK in London, they actually have two copies. And so those are the only two known copies of the Haitian Declaration of Independence. I think it's a really interesting exercise to read the two declarations together. There's different goals, and there's overlapping goals, right? There's a criticism of imperial power. There's a desire for kind of sovereignty. But the fight that the Haitian revolutionaries were fighting was drastically different. The American revolutionaries referred to their state of slavery under colonialism, right? But in Haiti, this was a kind of a personal slavery, and a systematic slavery in which individual liberty was restricted. So the focus is on freedom in the sense of abolition, the abolition of slavery, which went hand in hand with national sovereignty. It's very much a kind of call to arms, right? That the fight, it's often referred to as like the end of the Haitian Revolution, that it ends on January 1st, 1804 with the Declaration of Independence. But the rhetoric in the document is very much a call to vigilance, that the fight was not over, recognition that the French were still threatening the island, and that the fight for Haitian sovereignty would continue for years to come. That the war, they refer to the war with France as one that would be eternal, that this is an ongoing struggle. I strongly encourage your listeners to read the two documents together as an exercise in the classroom, or just for their own knowledge.
So, does the Haitian Declaration of Independence have any reference to slavery and or abolition?
Now I'm gonna have to go and look at it. Yes, I mean it is creating a free country, right? And one of the interesting things that I've found kind of among scholars is that because there's no law in 1804 that abolishes slavery, they kind of exclude Haiti from this narrative of laws that abolish slavery, right? But the country was founded for freedom, right? The entire purpose of the document was to create a free state. And so I'm not remembering the exact quotation. Are you thinking of a very specific one?
No,
Okay.
obviously, I'm making the point that 1776, whatever the rhetorical flourishes,
Right.
did not lead to the abolition of slavery. That's for sure.
No, very much not, right? Whereas the entire intention of the Haitian Declaration of Independence was to create a free country that was focused on individual freedom and the abolition of slavery. And they refer to the French living under slavery, that they were kind of slaves to this system, and that instead they would kind of be the free state, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, who or what is the abandoned faithful?
The Abandoned Faithful is a tentative title for my next book project, one that I've been working on for a few years. It's a project about Haiti's diplomatic negotiations with the Holy See in the 19th century, especially. And how I started the project was building off of my first book a little bit. Whenever people described Haiti's experience in the 19th century, they talked about the kind of list of dates in which foreign nations finally recognized Haiti's independence. And, it starts with the French in 1805, and as you know, that came at a great cost. And then they end with the United States in 1862. And sometimes on this list was included the Catholic Church, and that the Holy See finally recognized Haiti in 1860. As somebody who has studied the Haitian state and Haitian constitutions, I kind of thought, well, if many of the Haitian constitutions in the 19th century declared Roman Catholicism to be the state religion, but the Holy See only recognized Haiti in 1860, how did that work? And so this is a book about the efforts on the part of the Haitian state and on the part of the Holy See to establish what they call normal relations between Haiti and the Holy See, recognizing Haiti as a Catholic country and integrating it into the Catholic hierarchy. It's very much a story about sovereignty and 19th century civilization discourse and the law of nations, and Haiti's kind of ongoing fight for independence and sovereignty throughout the 19th century.
Well, Professor Gaffield, author of a forthcoming biography of Dessalines, we look forward to this book, The Abandoned Faithful, with similar eager anticipation. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Los Angeles.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, and for the world at www.kpfk.org. My name is Maggie Lepeak.
I'm Gary Baca.
And we're here to talk to you for a few minutes about a project we have going. It is the Transmitter Repair Fund in our December fund drive. Now, due to years of deferred maintenance at our transmitter site, we have been operating at only half the power. But now we have an exciting opportunity to amplify our impact, literally. We are ready to increase the power of our station, allowing us to reach more listeners, improve broadcast quality, and connect with communities that need our message. However, we can't do it without you. please support the Transmitter Repair Fund in our December fund drive by calling 818-985-5735, option 2. Gary, what's that number again?
818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, option 2.
Or pledge online anytime at kpfk.org. Any additional funds raised for this project will support our daily operations, including resuming regular maintenance at our transmitter site. Now here's something special, Gary, so get ready. Drum roll, please. John Densmore, legendary drummer and founding member of The Doors, and a wonderful friend to this radio station, has donated $5,000. That's 5 G's.
Whoa.
To our Transmitter Repair Fund. And you know what, Gary? John said, let's match this and help the station get back its power.
Yes. And the transmitter is something that we need. We need to broadcast at full power. We need to be heard and not silenced. So it's up to you to go to your phone now and support this separate fund that we have to maintain our transmitter. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Go to your phone now. Even if you pledged before and pledged for the station, this is very important. This is something that we're trying to do, and individually reach out to you and say, hey, you know what? We need to operate at full power. So we need a strong signal. So it's up to you to come up front and step up and help us out. That way we can keep KPFK with this signal going all over Southern California. 112,000 watts of listener-sponsored radio. So big shout out to John Densmore from The Doors,
John.
for helping us out. And it's many people like you that help us out during this time of need. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Let the phone room know that you want to help us with our transmitter so we could be restored to full power, and that way we can broadcast throughout all of Southern California.
That's right, Gary. Southern California and beyond. It's people-powered, and you have the power. Call us right now, 818-985-5735. Hit option 2. That's 818-985-KPFK, and online anytime at kpfk.org. Now, Gary, for 65 years, KPFK has been a vital part of our community, with the goal of bringing together the voices, music, and stories that define Southern California. With its 110,000-watt transmitter atop Mount Wilson, KPFK is one of the most powerful FM stations in the western United States. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, due to years of deferred maintenance at our transmitter site, we've been operating at only half the power. But this is such an exciting opportunity for folks to help us increase the power of our radio station. And again, to reach more listeners, to improve broadcast quality, and connect with those communities that really need us the most. Once again, it comes down to you. We cannot do this work without you. Increasing the station's power requires new power supplies for the transmitter, replacing the ice shields for the antenna, upgrading the cooling system for the control building, and adding a new dry line to hydrator unit. The total cost of this project is $20,000, and we're asking for your help to make this a reality. With John Densmore's $5,000 pledge, we're on our way to reaching our goal, but we can actually double that goal if we can match the $5,000.
Yes, let's match that. So $5,000 on the table. So that would mean maybe 5 of you pledging $1,000 to help us get our transmitter to full power. Or maybe that's 10 of you pledging $500. Whatever you can do makes a difference. $250 per person will get us to that $10,000 match. 818-985-5735. So what's happening is when you drive out of town, there's a signal that's coming from Tijuana, and it's bleeding right into our KPFK signal. And so for some folks, they're like, hey, you know, the signal's not that strong. Kind of annoying because you want to listen to KPFK throughout your drive and your commute. So this would help us out, and this would bring back our signal to full power, and that's because of you. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Once we do this, we're good. This is one of the last things on our list that we need to fix. And as we change as a radio station, we're going to make sure that we give you the programming that you need and love, and you'll want to hear it with this full signal. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK.
818-985-5735. Press option 2 to donate. Your gift of any size brings us closer to realizing this dream. Because, you know, Gary, it really is a dream to be back up to full power, because we've been at almost 50%, sometimes even less, over the last few years. So there's so many areas of Southern California that have been missing us. You can make this dream a reality. Together, we can ensure that KPFK continues to inspire, inform, and uplift more people than ever before. Join us in powering up for the future. Power to the people. To contribute, visit www.kpfk.org/support-KPFK. You'll see the transmitter icon on the website. Just click that. It'll take you right where you need to go. Also, if you wanted to contact me, feel free to email me at mlepique@kpfk.org. That's MLEPIQUE@kpfk.org. Every dollar counts, and your support truly matters.
Just one of many bills that we have, but John Densmore from The Doors. Can you imagine The Doors? I mean, this iconic group that gave us Light My Fire and Hello, I Love You is challenging us and asking you. John Densmore is literally asking you to pledge your support. He put down the $5,000. I just can't believe it. John Densmore, out of all people, the drummer from The Doors, is challenging us and saying, you know what, I'm going to help you guys out, but if I'm going to put this money in, I want other people to pledge and put their money in as well.
That's right.
So that's why it's so important, and it's an honor to have John Densmore contributing to this radio station, listening and supporting us as he has through the many years, along with Robbie Krieger from The Doors. So, you know, he's challenging us to step up. So pledge at any amount you can. Any amount helps. And you'll be right in there with John Densmore and the KPFK family, and we'll be restored back to the full power that we have to offer, that we should be offering. So we're only at 50%, and we'd like to be at 100. So that means you call now, 818-985-5735.
And one of the most famous, iconic, there's so many of them, Gary, from The Doors. Thank you so much, John Densmore. But you know what we need to do, Gary? We need to break on through to the other side.
Let's do it.
Show your support. Call us right now. It's people-powered. You have the power. 818-985-5735. Hit option 2. That's 818-985-KPFK. And online anytime at kpfk.org. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Maggie, and thank you to our listeners and the people pledging and calling in now. 818-985-5735. Don't forget, people-powered independent radio. Call the number now so we can be restored back to full power.
You got the power. Thank you so much, and let's make this happen together. Happy holidays, everyone.
For KPFK Pacifica Radio, this is Gerald Horne, and with me on the line is Marlene Daut, Professor of French and African Diaspora Studies at Yale University in Connecticut, and author of the book, The First and Last King of Haiti, The Rise and Fall of Henri Christophe. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK Pacifica Radio, Marlene Daut.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So who was Henri Christophe, and why did you decide to write a book about him?
Yes, so true to the title of the book, Henri Christophe was the first and last king of Haiti, but of course, it didn't start out that way. Something that some people don't know is that Christophe wasn't actually born on the island that is now Haiti. He was born in the Southern Caribbean on an island called Grenada. At the time, this island was in British hands. So he grew up in a British colony, essentially. We believe he was enslaved at birth. He ends up in North America, however, at the age of 12 years old, participating in the American Revolutionary War at the Battle of Savannah. From there, he does find himself on Saint-Domingue, as Haiti was called under French rule. And this is unfortunate for him because that island has the reputation at the time of being the cruelest slave colony in the world. And yet he finds himself there, eventually participates in the freedom struggle that we now call the Haitian Revolution in the 1790s. And he becomes a pretty important kind of free Black businessman in the period of post-emancipation, but during the time period when the island is still under French rule. And he ends up participating in Haiti's War of Independence as well, becomes general-in-chief of the Haitian army. And then after the assassination of Haiti's first ruler, Dessalines, who had declared the island independent of France on January 1st, 1804, Christophe becomes king of northern Haiti. And so that's how we get that's sort of the trajectory of his magnificent rise. And then, of course, he's going to have a fall after that.
So I noticed in your pages reference to Jean-Philippe Daut. Any connection to the author of this book? And if so, is there any family lore to share?
So that's so interesting, and people ask me all the time. So the Jean-Philippe in my book is Daut, and we know that because there are some phonetic spellings of his name as well in the book. So that's how he pronounced his last name, the French way. Whereas my last name is German because my last name comes from my father's side of the family, and I'm Haitian on my mother's side of the family. So there's no family connection there. I used to sort of wish there were, because Jean-Philippe Daut was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and on Mupana, where they have all the names etched into the wall of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, there is the name Daut there. So of course I had to take a picture of that when I saw it, but there isn't a family connection as far as I am aware, since that my last name is Daut, pronounced the German way, from the German side of my family.
So who was C.L.R. James, and how does your work add to, correspond with, or revise his work? Of course, he's, just to get ahead of the question, the author of the 1930s classic, The Black Jacobins, considered to be one of the leading tomes on the Haitian Revolution. So how does your work, as noted, add to, correspond with, or revise his work?
So that's such an interesting question because, I still teach The Black Jacobins. Yes, it was published in the 1930s, but I still find it useful and relevant for teaching because C.L.R. James, originally from Trinidad, was a great storyteller. And so it's his tale of the Haitian Revolution is very captivating, I think, for students and the way that he frames things. But one of the things that my students, I just got done teaching a class called Haiti and the Age of Revolutions. And one of the things my students point out consistently is the passage where C.L.R. James says that the revolution in Haiti is almost the work of a single man, almost entirely the work of a single man, that man being Toussaint Louverture. But students are, very astute readers, so they notice some contradictions in that because as the narrative goes along in the Black Jacobins, we see how many other leaders there are, in fact, vying for power with Toussaint Louverture or working alongside him. And Henri Christophe was one of those men who sometimes was vying for power with him, but usually in a kind of understated way, and oftentimes was working with him. And I think that we've kind of entered a different phase in the historiography of the Haitian Revolution, where things are no longer revolving around either the sort of momentousness, world historical significance of the event, although that is still important. And I think there can never be too many books about the Haitian Revolution and its significance and importance from various angles. Or we were getting a ton of biographies of Toussaint Louverture as researchers would kind of uncover more and more information. Well, now we've entered a phase where we need to know more about the lives of the other revolutionaries. We will always need to know more about this event. We can never know too much about Toussaint Louverture, but we also need to think about Dessalines. So there's a new biography of Dessalines coming from Julia Gaffield. We need to know more about Christophe, especially since in terms of the sort of very prominent revolutionaries, he's the one who lives the longest. He outlives Pétion, he outlives Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. So we need to think about his role in not just the revolution, but independent Haiti and sovereign Haiti. And from there, I hope we will get more biographies of women who participated in the revolution, of the various actors, Charles Belair, others who seem less important, but is that because we don't know as much about their lives? So I think that's the phase we're in now. We're going to be moving towards really delving deeply into the lives of the revolutionaries.
Another leading character in your pages is Napoleon, the French leader. And we have been informed, and we read in your book, that he was trying to overturn revolutionary progress, in fact, trying to impose a kind of genocide on Haiti. Talk to us about that. And also, if you are knowledgeable sufficiently, could you talk to us about how there was an overturning of slavery in the neighboring colonies of Martinique and Guadeloupe, but then that peculiar institution returned? How did that happen? I mean, what kind of forces were in play that allowed that to take place?
Yes, so these are really important questions because, again, just got done teaching this class on the Haitian Revolution, my students are thinking, this is really confusing because there's a way in which those who had heard about it before, it's presented to them as there's this slave rebellion and it continues for a time and then Haiti gets independence. But actually what happens is that the freedom struggle, as I like to call it, starts in 1791. The Haitian revolutionaries or freedom fighters force the commissioners that France has sent to restore order, which means to make sure slavery is functioning and that quiet the free people of color down. They actually end up formally abolishing slavery in 1793 because they have no choice. That's the only way that they can get the plantation economy going again. And of course, remember, Saint-Domingue is the most profitable sugar colony in the world. Well, the French revolutionaries follow this up in February 1794 with something that shocked the world, and that is that France declares slavery over in all of its overseas territories. This includes the island of Guadeloupe and other territories that France had at that time, but not the island of Martinique, which had been lost to the British. So from the period of 1794 to 1802, these are free Black colonies, which sounds like a contradiction, and in fact it was. So when Napoleon Bonaparte comes to power in 1799, he overthrows the Directory. One of the first things that he does is change the Constitution to say that there can be different laws in the colonies than the one in operation in France. Because this is the big problem. If France is one and indivisible, then France is the same whether it's overseas or in metropolitan territory. He does away with this law to pave the way for the restoration of slavery, which he never agreed with. So in terms of what happens on Saint-Domingue, he sends his brother-in-law, General Leclerc, to the island with initially 30,000 troops, but that number will grow to between 60 and 80,000 before the end of the Leclerc expedition, which ends in 1803. So just, under 2 years, this is how many troops he's sending. And the goal is to get rid of Louverture, arrest Christophe and Dessalines, or kill them if they can't be arrested, all the other major generals, and then to restart the slave trade, which Napoleon legislates back into operation in April 1802, in fact. But of course, things don't go according to his plan. And so his generals write to him repeatedly and say, we're going to use these genocidal tactics, which involved drownings, hangings, and mass drownings, I should say, and sending dogs after the revolutionaries to quote unquote eat them. The famous phrase of General Rochambeau, who was the second in command of the expedition, is then give them blacks to eat. Well, this just, encourages the freedom fighters even more. And again, they are victorious after the Battle of Vertières in November 1803 and declare independence in 1804. But things unfolded very differently on the other islands of the Caribbean. So now, if we go to May 1802, Martinique has been returned to French control. This is another problem for Napoleon, right? Is he going to abolish slavery on the island of Martinique? Or is he going to say slavery can exist there? Well, a May 1802 law says slavery can exist on the island of Martinique. So that takes care of that problem of his from his perspective. Then in July 1802, he issues a decree restoring slavery to the island of Guadeloupe. He has already sent another expedition there, led by a man named General Richepince, to put that into operation. So he kind of has these two different military campaigns going on in the Caribbean. Both are meant to restore slavery, but the one in Saint-Domingue obviously fails, but the one in Guadeloupe succeeds. And it's astonishing because that means from 1802, when slavery is restored, it lasts for 46 more years. It's not again abolished until 1848 after another French Revolution.
So you mentioned a few moments ago Dessalines, another famed leader of the revolutionary process. And you mentioned, of course, the upcoming biography of him, and we will be interviewing the biographer as well. Who was he and what was his relationship with the subject of your biography, Mr. Christophe?
Yes, so Dessalines is usually referred to as Haiti's founder. He becomes the Emperor Jacques I. He is considered to be the kind of architect of Haiti's famous Declaration of Independence. But unlike Christophe, Dessalines was born on the island of Saint-Domingue. He was for sure enslaved at birth. And a lot of the descriptions of him talk about the kind of whippings that he had on his body. So he had really lived through the terrors and tortures of slavery. And during the freedom struggle, he becomes one of the principal freedom fighters. He grows in the ranks of Toussaint's army and the kind of black revolutionaries at the time. And under that period of French rule, where they're quote unquote free black colony from 1794 to 1802, he becomes a general. In fact, he holds a higher rank than Christophe, because Christophe is a brigadier general, not to get too into the weeds, and Dessalines is a division general. But he also has a little bit of a rivalry going with Toussaint Louverture, that he doesn't necessarily agree with all of Toussaint Louverture's tactics, because Toussaint Louverture is known as a conciliator, which is not a position of weakness for Toussaint Louverture, but his openness to negotiation. And this is considered a fatal flaw in hindsight because his negotiators, the French, were not negotiating in good faith. But Dessalines really learns from this. And in fact, in his post-revolutionary writings, he reinforces the idea that we will not listen to the French, we will not negotiate with them because, and he names what happened to Toussaint Louverture because of what they did to Toussaint, which is arresting him, deporting him, and leaving him to die a horrible death in a prison in France.
Now, Haiti today shares the island known as Hispaniola to many with the Dominican Republic, and it's well known that in the DR, the dark skin that happen to be there are oftentimes persecuted on the premise that they may be of Haitian origin, for example. Does your book shed any light on the contemporary problems afflicting the bilateral relations between Haiti and the DR?
There are a couple of chapters in the book where I talk about the siege of Santo Domingo. And so this is a siege led by Dessalines, or ordered by Dessalines, to go and recover his territories in the east. And even though I would not being an expert on the Dominican Republic, I would be hard pressed to say there's a through line from this moment to the actual present. But what this episode shows is a kind of differing understanding of the limits and realm of the country of Haiti. Because at the moment of independence, France is in charge of the entire island. So the entire island is a French colony. Because at the Treaty of Bâle in 1795, Spain had ceded the eastern part of the island, the part that is now the Dominican Republic, to France. And so when Toussaint Louverture was governor general, he was governor general over the whole island. And so the Declaration of Independence makes clear that Haiti is the whole island, but the French are still on the eastern side of the island. They're still there. And so Dessalines orders a siege to go and essentially kick the French out. But it doesn't work. It fails, and that's how we get the current borders that that are Haiti today. But as the work of Anne Eller and Graham Nestler and others who have worked on the Dominican Republic in the 19th century, Santo Domingo as it was called, its history in the 19th century show is that the Dominican elite, deliberately use episodes like this to frame Haitians as attempted conquerors, that the Haitian people, led by their rulers, were trying to colonize Santo Domingo or the Dominican Republic. And they used the moment when Jean-Pierre Boyer reunifies the two sides of the island in 1822 as their evidence. And how we know this is Dominican Independence Day is celebrated in February of 1844, which is the moment where there's disunification, where the two sides of the island separate again. So they celebrate their Independence Day not as their independence from Spain, but their quote unquote independence from Haiti. So you can see that animosity and the ideologies driving it have, yes, absolutely racial origins, but they also have this deep historical sort of underbelly that allows some in the Dominican Republic to frame their opposition to Haiti as their hatred for their former colonizer, when of course that wasn't actually what happened. Reunification was supported broadly on both sides of the island for more than 20 years.
Finally, Marlene L, Professor of French and African Diaspora Studies at Yale University in Connecticut, author of the book, The First and Last King of Haiti. What's next on your research agenda?
So I really have been working a lot on the indemnity, which is how I finished The First and Last King of Haiti with an epilogue that talks about what I call the greatest heist in history. It's basically a stick 'em up. The French arrive in 1824. They tell Christophe's successor, Jean-Pierre Boyer, that he needs to sign what I call this disastrous indemnity, which is a tax on Haiti's freedom. You pay us 150 million francs, so we're going to war. And, there's tons of questions that historians have about whether or not Boyer was really threatened, what were his true motives, would the French have really made war? And so I intend to investigate all of this and to offer to the reader an understanding of how this happens. Because usually either Boyer is blamed or victimized. And I think that there's a more nuanced story here that deserves to be told, along with its deep repercussions, not just in Haiti, but in the rest of the Atlantic world and post-slavery societies in general.
Could you elaborate on that last point, if you may?
Yes, well, this was the first time that enslavers were paid after slavery was over, but it won't be the last time. The other nations around the world, France, England, the United States, paid enslavers after they ended slavery, or after slavery was forced to end in their territories or in their countries. But the precedent for that was set by what happened in Haiti. And I think we need more elaboration on how exactly that happened. Is it a coincidence, or did the other world powers actually, learn from this, that they could get away with such a form of heist, essentially?
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, Marlene L. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Los Angeles.
Thank you so much for having me.
And in closing, we'd like to thank all those who donated this hour to support Freedom Now and KPFK. Thank you to our guest, Dr. Julia Gaffield. Thank you, Dr. Marlene Daut. Thank you to our producers, Dr. Gerald Horne, Sister Flora, Sister Femi, Brother Brandon, our board op Wendell, and all those who made today's program possible. Please stay tuned for our Sister Sumta coming up next with Spotlight Africa, addressing issues facing Mother Africa. Signing off for Freedom Now, this is Sister Thage, and until next week, as always, we stand ready for revolution.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.
Power to the people.